Henry's first wife was Catalina Trastamara, otherwise known as Catherine of Aragon. Today her name is most commonly spelled with a C, but she spelled and signed her name with a K. Catherine and Henry were married for 23 years, 11 months and 12 days. Catherine's motto as Queen of England was humble and loyal. Her badge symbol is a crowned pomegranate. The pomegranate is an ancient symbol for fertility and regeneration. It would have been seen as a very apt symbol for Catherine and the promise of heirs that her marriage brought. The crown is an emblem of victory and sovereignty. Its significance as the decoration is the ultimate level of rank and power. Catherine was quite short in stature. She was of a very fair complexion, had blue eyes and had hair colour that was between reddish blonde and auburn. In her youth she was described as the most beautiful creature in the world, and that there was nothing lacking in her that the most beautiful girl should have. Thomas More and Lord Herbert would reflect later in her lifetime that in regard to her appearance, that there were few women who could compete with the Queen in her prime. She was the youngest surviving child of King Ferdinand II of Aragon and Queen Isabella I of Castile. At an early age, Catherine was considered a suitable wife for Arthur, Prince of Wales, heir apparent to the English throne, due to the English ancestry she inherited from her mother. The two were married by proxy on the 19th of May 1499 and corresponded by writing each other letters in Latin. When Arthur turned 15, it was decided that they were old enough to be married in person. On the 4th of November, they met for the first time. They spoke to each other in Latin, but found that they could not understand each other's spoken conversation because they had learned different Latin pronunciations. Once married, the couple were sent to live at Ludlow Castle on the border of Wales. A few months later, they both became ill, possibly with sweating sickness, which was sweeping the area at the time. Arthur died on the 2nd of April 1502. He was only 16 years old. Catherine recovered to find herself a teenage widow. A papal dispensation was obtained to enable her to marry Henry, though the marriage did not take place until after Henry came to the throne in 1509, 7 years after Arthur's death. She was 23 and Henry was 18. On Saturday the 23rd of June 1509, the traditional eve of coronation procession to Westminster was greeted by a large and enthusiastic crowd. As was the custom, the couple spent the night before their coronation at the Tower of London. On Midsummer's Day, Sunday the 24th of June 1509, Henry VIII and Catherine were anointed and crowned together by the Archbishop of Canterbury at a lavish ceremony at Westminster Abbey. In August 1509, 2 months after the wedding, Catherine's first pregnancy was announced. On the 31st of January 1510, she delivered a stillborn girl. Catherine was pregnant 7 times altogether. In May 1510, 4 months after the loss of her first child, Catherine announced her second pregnancy. A son, Henry, Duke of Cornwall, was born on the 1st of January 1511. On the 22nd of February, after only 52 days of life, the young prince died. By early 1513, Catherine was pregnant again. On the 30th of June, she was left as regent while Henry went to fight in France. On the 17th of September, she went into labour prematurely and gave birth to a boy who died shortly after. In June 1514, Catherine announced her fourth pregnancy. On the 8th of January 1515, she gave birth to a stillborn boy. In the summer of 1515, Catherine announced her fifth pregnancy. However, less hope was placed on her heir following her previous pregnancies. On the 18th of February 1516, Catherine delivered a healthy girl at 4 a.m. at Greenwich Palace in Kent. She was named Mary and christened 3 days later. Despite his evident disappointment, Henry said that if it were a girl this time, then surely healthy boys would follow. In the autumn of 1517, Catherine suffered another miscarriage. In February 1518, Catherine announced her seventh pregnancy. On the 10th of November 1518, she gave birth to a daughter, but the child lived only a few hours. On the 11th of June 1513, Henry appointed Catherine regent in England with the titles of Governor of the Realm and Captain General while he went to France on a military campaign. The Scots invaded, and on the 3rd of September 1513, she ordered Thomas Lovell to raise an army. Catherine rode north in full armour to address the troops. Despite being heavily pregnant at the time, she sent a letter to Henry along with a piece of the bloodied coat of King James IV of Scotland, who died in the battle, for Henry to use as a banner. In 1520, Catherine's nephew, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, paid a state visit to England, and she urged Henry to enter an alliance with Charles rather than with France. Immediately after his departure, she accompanied Henry to France on the celebrated visit of Francis I, the Field of the Cloth of Gold. Within 2 years, war was declared against France, and the Emperor was once again welcome in England, where plans were afoot to betroth him to Catherine's daughter, the Princess Mary. In 1525, Henry VIII became enamoured of Anne Boleyn, a lady-in-waiting to Queen Catherine. Catherine's behaviour to Anne was impeccable. At first, Catherine tried to help Anne resist Henry's advances. At a card game Catherine instigated with Anne, Catherine's famous remark to Anne was, "My Lady Anne, you have good hap to stop at a king, but you are not like others. You will have all or none." When a lady spoke ill of Anne, Catherine said, "Pray for her, because the time will come when you shall pity and lament her case." Catherine was no longer able to bear children by this time. Henry began to believe that his marriage was cursed and sought confirmation from the Bible, which he interpreted to say that if a man marries his brother's wife, the couple will be childless, even if her marriage to Arthur had not been consummated, and Catherine would insist to her dying day that she had came to Henry's bed a virgin. Henry's interpretation of that Bible passage meant that their marriage had been wrong in the eyes of God. It soon became the one absorbing object of Henry's desires to secure an annulment. Catherine was defiant when it was suggested that she quietly retire to a nunnery, saying, "God never called me to a nunnery. I am the king's true and legitimate wife." Wolsey went so far as to convene an ecclesiastical court in England, with a representative of the Pope presiding, and Henry and Catherine herself in attendance. The Pope had no intention of allowing a decision to be reached in England, and his legate was recalled. The Pope forbade Henry to marry again before a decision was given in Rome. Wolsey had failed and was dismissed from public office in 1529. Wolsey then began a secret plot to have Anne Boleyn forced into exile and began communicating with the Pope to that end. When this was discovered, Henry ordered Wolsey's arrest, and had he not been terminally ill and died in 1530, he'd most likely have been executed for treason. When Henry decided to annul his marriage to Catherine, John Fisher became her most trusted counsellor and one of her chief supporters. He appeared in the legate's court on her behalf, where he shocked people with the directness of his language, and by declaring that, like John the Baptist, he was ready to die on behalf of the insolubility of marriage. Henry was so enraged by this that he wrote a long Latin address in answer to Fisher's speech. The removal of the cause to Rome ended Fisher's role in this matter, but Henry never forgave him. Until the end of her life, Catherine would refer to herself as Henry's only lawful wedded wife and England's only rightful queen, and her servants continued to address her by that title. Henry refused her the right to any title but Dowager Princess of Wales, in recognition of her position as his brother's widow. In 1535 she was transferred to Kimbolton Castle. There she confined herself to one room, which she left only to attend Mass, dressed in the hair shirt of the Order of St. Francis, and fasted constantly. She was forbidden to see her daughter Mary. They were also forbidden to communicate in writing, but sympathisers discreetly ferried letters between the two. Henry offered both mother and daughter better quarters and permission to see each other if they would acknowledge Anne Boleyn as the new queen. In late December 1535, sensing her death was near, Catherine made her will and wrote to her nephew, the Emperor Charles V, asking him to protect her daughter, Mary. Catherine died at Kimbolton Castle on the 7th of January 1536. The following day, news of her death reached the king. At the time, there were rumours that she was poisoned, but it was most likely cancer of the heart. On the day of Catherine's funeral, Anne Boleyn miscarried a boy. Catherine was buried in Peterborough Cathedral, with the ceremony due to her position as a Dowager Princess of Wales and not a queen. Henry did not attend the funeral and forbade Mary to attend. Her tomb can be seen by the public, and there is hardly a time when it is not decorated with flowers or pomegranates.